Hello and welcome to the India Energy Hour. I am Sandeep Pai, a former journalist with Hindustan Times and now an energy researcher at the University of British Columbia.
And I'm Shreya Jay, journalist with Business Standard newspaper in Delhi, writing on the energy sector.
Together, we are really excited to co host a new podcast on India's energy transition, the India Energy Hour. This podcast is hosted by 101 Reporters, an innovative news agency that connects grassroots reporters and media houses to bring out untold stories. The show is produced by Tejas Dayan and Sagar of 101 Reporters.
In this podcast, we want to unpack and document India's energy transition. We will interview leading energy, development, and climate experts from academia, civil society, and the government. Through these interviews, we will explore the most pressing hurdles and promising opportunities in the energy transition unfolding in India. We will examine the role of government, finance, social justice, and science. Over time, we will feature other countries of the global south as well. COVID-19 pandemic continues to have a crushing impact on economies around the world, including India. Facing an economic crisis never seen since independence, the central and state governments are realigning their focus towards welfare and developmental sectors. Renewable energy, which is the newest infrastructure sector in India, could take a backseat. To understand the impact of COVID on renewable energy in India, we spoke with Sunil Jain, former CEO, Hero Future Energies, and a renewable sector veteran. Sunil has led two clean energy companies in India. He has also been vital in pushing the government to adopt policy changes that shaped the renewable energy sector in the country.
Welcome to India Energy Hour. We're really glad that you're able to join today. We're really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Sandeep and Shreya. Interesting to be on this show. I love these kind of podcasts, and I hope they go far and wide across the globe so that people understand the needs of the renewable.
Thank you, sir. So let's start with you telling us about yourself. You have been a professional, a senior executive in the renewable energy sector for some decades now. I call you one of the seasoned players in the sector as well. We want to know your journey. How do you stumble into the sector? Where are you from? What did you study? And what made you stick with this particularly new sector, of which you happen to be one of the founding members, if I may call you so. So, sir, please tell us about yourself.
Thank you for those ravishing views about me, but I may not deserve all that. But having said that, my major part of my life or career has been in the automobile sector. I did my engineering from Birla Institute of Technology, and then I've also done my MBA from FMS, Delhi University. And all along, I've been part of the automobile sector and infrastructure sector. Railways, I've been doing a lot of projects for railways and for, then electrical industry, where we were doing a lot of heaters and so on and so forth. And of course, auto and auto components. That's been my career profile of 25 years before somebody told me that, would you like to look at renewable industry? Absolutely nascent industry, and hardly anybody knew about it. People knew that there used to be wind turbines in Tamil Nadu. In fact, there were many in Maharashtra and other places also, but people thought Tamil Nadu was synonymous with wind turbine. And it so happened was that in 2007, one of my ex-bosses in the auto sector who had left the company, was roped in by a PE fund, IDFC Private Equity, to start a renewable IPP, the first of its kind, incubating a renewable IPP by a PE fund, much ahead of its times. So the idea was phenomenal. But one thing more was there, that they decided that they will, if they rope in the typical power sector team into the renewable sector, they will never be able to look beyond the numbers. Because typically any power plant in those days was 300 megawatts to 500, 600 megawatts. And they were gradually moving towards a gigawatt plants. So power sector guys said this 3 megawatt, 5 megawatt plants is not their cup of tea. So they said that we need somebody who has a business acumen, entrepreneurship, and we would like to bring him on board. So my ex-boss became the CEO of that company called Green Infra, and I was roped in as the business development head. Well, there was a lot of resistance from all over, family, friends, and they were telling me, how can you be so stupid to leave a... And I was in a fairly senior position. I was like number 2 in my organization, aspiring to become a CEO in that auto sector, which I would have had I not left. But fact is, there was somewhere in my heart that, what are we doing in the auto sector? I see the roads in Delhi. Delhi was, we used to do statistics, so I knew that Delhi had a vehicle population which was 3 times the vehicle population of Mumbai or 5 times the vehicle population of Mumbai, and it was combined of Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta, Bangalore, so on and so forth. I said, we are going to leave a legacy for our children and grandchildren, which they will never like, and they will actually tell that what your forefathers left for you. It's not a healthy legacy. Against the wishes of many, except my wife, who supported, I plunged into the sector. And it so happened that we started Green Infra in early January 2008. Things started rolling on. And I had to learn the ropes, not only of the renewable, but also of the power sector per se. I was zero on power sector. So started learning the ropes, as all consultants do and as all journalists also do. You learn from us and then write about us. So I started doing that. I started interacting with OEMs. That time it was only wind. There was no solar business. Well, I must, without being modest, say that I learned it very fast. But what happened was that within 6 months of my joining, the CEO left. And therefore, I was made not given the designation, but I was made the head of the company. And virtually means de facto CEO. And then started the journey, and we did some great things. Established the first project in IPP was a group captive project in Tamil Nadu of 26.8 megawatt. Just imagine, people don't even know renewables, and we're doing group captive trying to sell green energy to people. And mind you, even today, that's probably the best project for anybody. Actually, that changed the whole concept of installing wind turbines in Tamil Nadu. I can call myself the pioneer of that concept in the country, of group captive. And actually, if you people track it from 2009 onwards or 10 onwards, it was all group captive in Tamil Nadu. Getting marquee customers like Standard Chartered Bank who approved investments from UK or Taj Hotels and so on and so forth. It was a great journey. And then the 2009 Lehman crisis and the financial markets collapsed. But we saw an opportunity in that because IDFC had committed funds to us. So we were there with the fund. And we leveraged and bargained hard with the equipment supplier and project developers because there was no projects to be done. And we got really good deals. And parallelly, BP came to sell their assets in India and we lapped it up. We were not the most highest bidder, but we gave money on the table. And that actually set Green in front to a different. And then a couple of IPPs started coming. So that's the story of how I came into renewables. I always wanted a low carbon economy. Even in auto days, there used to be a fight in my company as to how much reductions in carbon or what energy efficiencies we can bring. There was no renewable that time. Energy efficiency. I thought I was doing something good. And then so happened that government announced Jwala-led solar mission. I had picked up my ropes and understood business much, much better. I wouldn't say I was an expert, but I understood much better. I started interacting with government to shape policies for the sector. That was way back in 2009-10. Even the MNRE was like, also ran ministry. It was there because it was a ministry. And, you started enjoying the role because you thought that you're shaping the policies of something which will be the future for the country. And it has actually happened. I still remember my colleagues, Inderpreet Wadhwa and all from Azure and all, or Sun Edison, and we all got together to shape the policies for GNSC, or that 15-year plan for National Action Plan for Climate Change. We used to sit at hours in the MNRE. We had a room in MNRE to discuss the PPA. Lawyers from US advising, India advising. Because we thought if whatever you can get today is okay, very difficult to change later by the governments. So that security clause in the solar for payment was incorporated way back in 2010-11. You feel proud that you are a part of the renewable journey and you shaped this sector along with the government and other colleagues and peers.
That's great. And so from there, you moved on and you finally worked with Hero and so
Yeah.
on.
So, what happened is that IDFC Private Equity, the Fund 2 and Fund 3 had exhausted all their funds and they were not raising anything new. So they decided to exit. And they had actually decided in 2011 itself that they will start exit. Although we were trying to raise funds, but those days investors are not willing to back India. Let me be very. 11, 12, 13 was very, very bad for the country. The image outside was very bad. In fact, I personally wanted to start my own venture in 2012, but there were a lot of equity players who said, we can back you, not the country. We are not comfortable with the policies and regulations and what was happening around at that time. There was almost like a policy paralysis. So it never happened. So IDFC Private Equity started looking for exit, selling the business, and I started looking for my exit from it. And coincidentally, met the Munjals from Hero. They said, why are you looking for a venture? Let's create a new venture together. And then, in those days, when I left IDFC, it was a 400 megawatt company with another 300 megawatt in pipeline, which was extremely big. We commissioned our first 15 megawatt solar project in Gujarat, much ahead of the schedules, and for which we were given credit by Australian Chief Minister. I still cherish that photo with our present Prime Minister Narendra Modi giving us a certificate of appreciation for that project. So, I only created an organization which I believed will be nimble-footed but deliver on what we promised, and that's what we did. And I exited from Green Infra, and IDFC exited a year after that, or a year and a half after that. And this was a star investment for them. It was probably one of the best returns they got in that compared to their other thermal or manufacturing. Everybody out of that, after that, the funds closed and everybody moved out of IDFC also. So the IDFC was not. So we started venture in 2012 with Hero, almost end of 2012. And here also, a lot of my team colleagues moved from Green Infra to Hero. The core team moved with me. And first project, in fact, we commissioned in 2013 March. I joined in November 2012. And 2013 March, we had commissioned our first project of 40 megawatt wind in Rajasthan. So, that was the kind of confidence we had in ourselves that, that time we believed we could do anything. State governments were supportive. Let me be very honest. State governments were supportive. And then the journey is there, of course, and created a brand for Hero. Actually, it's not only a company. Hero Future Energies was a brand in itself. In fact, the industry followed Hero Future Energies and said, okay, if Hero is doing this, probably it must be right.
If I may ask, how was it like working with a family-owned company like Munjals that technically been in automobile sector, something that you left and joined Clean Energy?
Yeah. So, in fact, the family, I must give credit to the family, because when I was discussing with them of my onboarding on this venture was very clear that it will be a hands-off approach from the family. They'll be only at the board level or one member of the family, which is Rahul Munjal on the investment committee. And due credit to the family, they are a very humble family. And even Rahul Munjal, everybody has been, stuck to what they committed. They said we will put in around $100 million. They did that. And we delivered. And Shreya knows it. Shreya has been in touch with me. And what happened was that because we were able to deliver, the government also started looking up at us. We were probably the first call for any policy decision making or any ideas. Secretaries and joint secretaries would discuss with us. Then Sumant Sinha came into picture, I remember in 2010-11. And when I joined Hero, we formed WIPA. There was no wind association worth except for that IWPA in Tamil Nadu, which is predominantly a Tamil Nadu-based association. And I became the founding president of WIPA. And I was the president till 1st of June. Now I have resigned. So, Sumant and myself, then we started shaping policies, and Sumant came into the IPP business. Sun Edison and all came in solar. So we had Azure in solar. There were good IPPs which were shaping up. And luckily, except for Sun Edison for their own problems, nothing to do with India per se, collapsed. But others have all continued and grown big. Look at Greenco. In fact, I would rate not Green Infra as the first renewable IPP, although of substance, yes, it was the one. But Greenco was there with that small 6 megawatt, 12 megawatt biomass plants and a small wind project or something. And look where Greenco has gone, building a 10 gigawatt platform. So India has had a lot of success stories after that. And we must give credit to the government also in shaping policies over that time. I think that they were more forthcoming.
That's really great, sir. Your journey is really fascinating from auto to renewables, seeing from a very small scale renewables to now really like large scale. I have one very quick question and then we can go to the topic of today's discussion. How many, I would say, gigawatts of solar and wind have you overseen?
3 gigawatt. Equally split, more than 3 gigawatt.
3 gigawatt for solar and for wind.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. So yeah, from very small scale to from 6 megawatt, I guess, to hundreds of megawatt. That's really great. So yeah, I think we'll start with the topic of kind of today's discussion, which is how COVID-19 has impacted or is impacting the clean energy sector. If you can give a sense of like how it's impacting both globally and also in India.
Good. If I talk of globally, it has not impacted. If you look at the 2020 numbers, there's been growth both in solar and in wind. But I would just give one caution on that. The 50% of the capacities have come from China. Almost. A country which was not impacted by COVID because it originated. So that is one thing. There have been impacts. But if I talk on total numbers per se, no. You added 93 gigawatt of winds in 2020 compared to almost 74 or 75 gigawatt previously. And same is true for solar. In fact, solar, the growth was much more. So globally, I don't think so it impacted so much. But if I back home here, the numbers are different. And I would not put that number totally to COVID because that problems had started even before COVID. If you actually see, Indian problems already had started in 2019 and they were aggravated by the incoming of COVID in the sector. So everything got delayed. Government started giving extension. And as this was happening, you had suddenly a major disaster in this year, or in fact, I would say from today, August 2020, when the supply chain started getting squeezed and the prices started going up. So India has been impacted far more. If you actually see, Indian installations have declined year on year. We have, India has added what? If I'm not wrong, India just added 3.2 gigawatt in 2020 compared to what? 7.3, I think so we added previous years. So there's been a sharp drop. And I do not see that recouping also to the extent that you can show a growth over 2018-19. That's the challenge. Wind has been impacted very substantially from the target was 3.2 gigawatt, we installed only 1.1 gigawatt. And wind problems of WOOs have been going on for some time now after the bidding has happened. So it is not right to blame it on COVID. But yes, COVID has only accelerated that demise of wind in the country to some extent.
Sir, what do you think? You said that COVID has a very little role to play. So where does the major blame lies? And if you can explain it vis-a-vis solar and wind separately. You mentioned that wind obviously has been facing bad times for quite some time. So was it policy fluctuation? Was it delay in giving relief or lack of planning? What do you blame the most on?
So, I'm not saying that COVID has not impacted. COVID has impacted. What I'm trying to say is that impact only accelerated the problems, but these problems were there before COVID also. And of course, as we are famous for the policy flip-flop, there's nothing one can do much about it. Whether it is states or central government, the policies don't come out. And, the advent of the new Andhra Pradesh government and that order on wind and solar to reduce the tariffs to half probably was one of the straws which impacted investments into that state where a lot of projects were supposed to come up, and that was one of the key states for wind. There are only 7 or 8 states in the country, out of which Telangana is almost reluctant to do wind. They've not done anything. Andhra, after this policy flip-flop, was shut down. Maharashtra, nobody wants to do it. You live with Gujarat and Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, 3 states. People don't want to touch Karnataka because of land issues. Tamil Nadu, you don't have evacuation. So, if you look at specific states, there are specific problems for each state. It is not that these problems were not there. They were there, but they were much less. People were going around them and trying to resolve them. But now that because of the bidding, the tariffs were low, there was hardly any room to solve those problems. You didn't have that margin to solve and put in extra capex to solve those problems. And with the commodity cycle, what it is and what it has been there for last 1.5, 2 years, the cost of the wind turbines does not make sense at a ₹2.70, ₹2.80 tariff. Not that I blame the government for that. I think so. Industry and government both have to take that blame together. The industry has been bidding it. Government has not told you that you bid 2.8, but that narrative that nobody will buy power below 3 forces the industry to try to keep the tariffs low so that at least the capacity will be built. So policy flip-flop, I think so probably is one of the biggest factors. And let's take the case of recent this thing also. We have done so much of work on unified bidding guidelines, which has been happening for the last 8-9 months. There was a committee which has been formed by MNRE to release those unified guidelines. They haven't been released so far, which actually should have been done in January this year. The amendments to Electricity Act, tariff policy, anything you talk about, nothing has seen the light of the day. But those things actually, keep the investors away. And this is a capital-intensive business. You need capital. From 2019, that is the last when, external new capital came to the country. Otherwise, whatever new capital has come is the existing investors putting in money into their own companies. Or there is a consolidation happening. So, new funds coming up. Only those players who have been here around, like Actis. Actis has been in this sector for quite some time now. So they know the ropes of the sector, even though, they may not be the happiest guys. But having said that, they still know everything. So they are going to bring in capital because they're raising fund on basis of that. Let me tell you that this is the ideal time for India to open up, bring in policies and framework for the very simple reason that the world is moving towards the ESG investment compliances. Everybody wants to invest on ESG. That's the mandate, whether it's private equity fund, whether it's a sovereign fund, whether it is a developmental institute, everybody is looking at that. Everybody wants to be ESG compliant. That's the mantra of this decade. And therefore, this is the right time. And that capital is cheaper than what we need. Now, if you have a policy which is in the right direction, you need $50 billion year on year to meet your 450 gigawatt target by 2030. $50 billion of equity, I'm saying. A $500 billion equity is required. So, policy, a stability is important. The payments to renewables compared to thermal. Let me tell you this. Well, there is a big debate on how the payments are, but there is almost, $15 billion or maybe more now. Shreya would be up to date on the figures of outstandings by the discoms to the generators. Over $18 billion. I heard last was 1,25,000 crores. Now, this is again after a bailout of 90,000 crores. Guys, what are we talking about? And every investor would not want to put good money behind bad. A simple principle in life. So this sector needs dramatic reforms if we have to achieve that target. COVID has impacted the current pipeline of goods. That is the only thing which COVID has impacted. But that pipeline is delayed by 6 months. Okay, understood. Yes, because there has been a shortage of labor, manpower, supply chains were impacted. Now, supply chain is another issue which we can discuss after a while. Supply chains were impacted, labors are not there. And on top of that, government offices not working, so the clearances, approvals, those are delayed. But then, okay, you can't blame anybody. That's probably because of the COVID. And government has been kind enough to give extension. But here, what I want to point is second extensions have come very fast after the second wave. But the first wave extension came so late, it makes your life on tenterhooks. And you don't know whether to start project or not to start. If the government is not going to give you extension, might as well not start. So timing is also important. Because if it is not going to give you extension, then you can't sink in more money and pay penalties. The intention at the highest level in the country are very good. And I'm really happy that the Prime Minister himself is setting those lofty targets. We can be cynical about that target is not going to be met. Fair enough. But please understand, from 20 gigawatt to 175 gigawatt, even if you achieve 125 gigawatt, that's a job still well done. So it's not bad. India is one of those few markets which is adding almost 5 gigawatts annually, even in these times. So I'm not so much concerned about not meeting the 175 gigawatt target by 2022. Okay, we'll meet it by 2023. Heavens are not going to fall. But question is that what actually troubles you is that you can do much more. India as a country has a potential to do 3 times of what it is doing, provided we have the right frame. The only sector which COVID has impacted is rooftop installation. And that's impacted as a big. I agree fully that that impact of COVID has been a setback because people who had rooftop industries and commercials, they were all shut down. So even the energy generated was going waste or going to the grid. So the investors would have lost money in that. For ground installation, yes, time value of money, interest during construction period, government did give waivers to some extent. So, those things help. But yes, project costs have gone up. So that is the impact of COVID, that returns for investors have gone down. And already the returns were squeezed. You don't make too much of money and 2.4. Two of the largest renewable market in the world is US and China. We all acknowledge that. And both of them do not have any bidding for it. So, they don't have any bidding.
Sir, you mentioned that fresh funds have stopped coming in the past some years. We are also seeing a lot of consolidation happening. Smaller players are going out, even foreign players. Some of them are exiting. One big example being SoftBank Energy, whatever be their own alignment to the global policies. So we are seeing this consolidation, and there might be a likelihood that there would be a big 6, big 10 in the sector. Is it a good sign, bad sign? How do you look at this particular trend? Let's talk about companies, then probably we can go back to the policies which are leading to this happening.
So point well taken, and actually that is what is the trend happening in the country. I agree with you, Shreya, that there will be some top 10 companies which will be running the sector. Plus minus 10% is okay. But the fact is, yes, the bigger ones will become bigger. There is no room for small players. Any player who aspires to be a 500, 600 a gigawatt player, I think so, he should not do it. Now, renewables is a mainstream power. It is standing on its own legs. Even if I talk about transmission charges being payable, even then it will be now competing with the thermal. So my worry is not that. Thing is that the scale has changed totally. If you need a smaller player, they should be in the rooftop and off-grid segment. But the on-grid segment is Big Daddy's game. You cannot, it is something panning out what happened in the telecom sector. There were many players, smaller players also and bigger players also. And at the end of the day, you got just 3 players left. So here, renewables, you'll have 8 to 10 players left. What is ultimately going to happen is that there'll be always continuous churning. Any private equity fund coming in has a fund life of 5 to 7 years and exit life of another 2. So in 7 to 9 years, the funds exit. They would love to exit in 5 years. There is no doubt about it. So especially the aggregators, like the KKR fund is there, Edelweiss fund is there, who are aggregating assets. They will exit in 5 years. So who will acquire a gigawatt platform? Not a small player, definitely. You need around $800 million to acquire that platform. So obviously a big player will acquire. Renewable is as much about technology and installation and EPC as much as it is a finance game. Finance plays a big, big role in returns on renewable. So I agree with you that you will be having 8 to 10 players. Now, if another 3, 4 big players come and shake the market, that's a different game. That will be good for the government because the tariffs will start going further down. But yes, I agree with you. This consolidation happens in every industry. Let me tell you. You look at the motorcycle industry, you name me one small player which is existing. It's only those big 4 players who are surviving. In fact, in the motorcycle industry, no Chinese have been able to make inroads purely because the bigger ones became big and became competitive. So same is going to happen here. The bigger ones will become big and their ability to, acquire projects gets better. And there's nothing wrong in it. I believe the small players should do the development work. Everybody may have aspiration, but small players can do the developmental work. What is a model in US? You acquire land, you acquire evacuation, you do the study, make a proper project report, give the land, and give it to the big players. But one thing, I don't know if you are seeing a trend, is the backward integration by the renewable IPPs, which is, I believe, is going to happen. Good or bad, only time will tell. So like Adani is already backwardly getting integrated into solar, but it is also getting into wind. Renew, solar, trying in wind. So all these big players are trying to do that.
That's really interesting. I have one other integration question. Do you think, because I mean solar's cost curve is really like going down, right? But wind has wind can't go down as fast as solar. So do you think the market will consolidate for solar, and wind will be like kind of left behind? Or and the second part of that question is, and if let's say that were to happen, uh, do you think our 450 targets is going to be mostly met by solar, or there's some scope for wind as well?
Well, this is one question which is asked from me many times ago. So, wind and solar both have to coexist as we move forward. If you only do solar and large scale solar means, let me give you an example. If out of 450 gigawatt, if 300 or 350 gigawatt is solar, what are you doing? You're bunching your entire renewable energy in those 8 hours during the day. And that can be disaster for your grid as well as for your plan to give out round the clock. So I strongly believe wind has to coexist with solar, albeit in a lower number. Absolutely right. How much that number will be, I can't predict right now. But I still believe it will be in the ratio of at least 2.5 is to 1. If you have 2.5 solar, you'll have 1 wind. Because hybrid is required if you have to move to RTC power and a cost-effective power. Please keep in mind that India is a L1 country. We believe everything should be L1, and that L1 should be the lowest possible around the world. So even in RTC power, you would look at L1, and that can only happen if you have a hybrid of solar and wind, because storage battery requirement will go down once you have both wind and solar combined together. So I still see future for wind. Yes, it will be lower, no doubt about it. So wind industry, if it expects that we'll do 10 gigawatt a year or 8 gigawatt a year, I don't think so. That's good. It has its own challenges. You have a new challenge under the Supreme Court order of Great Indian Bustard, which has virtually made the entire Rajasthan to go underground with 220 kV cables also going underground. Those are not practical things. Wind will be there. I agree with you. So what you need is, you need some policy innovations and such things. Because, states may say, why should I buy wind at 2 rupees 80 paisa when solar is at 2 rupees? Fair enough. They are right in that sense. But what you can do is hybridize it and give a blended tariff of wind and solar to the state government, saying this is what you have to buy. You have to buy wind and solar combined at 2 rupees 80 paisa. We have even suggested one more thing, that for the entire 12 months bid, they've seen states doing tariff shopping, not signing or approving PSA. So what we are saying is, all the bids during the year, a weighted average tariff should be worked out, both wind and solar combined, at the end of the year. And that tariff should be accepted by the state government across the state. So everybody gets a uniform tariff, whether it is solar or wind, and they get the energy. States are concerned about what? Their RPO obligation, which can come either through wind and solar, and a tariff. So you're giving them both. So if some policy innovations take place, I think so both will survive equally well. And you need both of them. And wind, I agree with you, costs are not going down, but rupees per kilowatt hour is going down.
Sir, I would want to just ask here. Obviously, there are challenges within the sector, be it solar or wind. But you mentioned that there is growth going forward because investors are bullish and India has this immense capacity, because there are so many electrified households, etc. But the challenge that remains it, and something that would be exacerbated because of COVID, is that states would now be reluctant to invest in sectors such as this. As we have seen after pandemics, state governments or be it center realign their focus more towards healthcare, social reforms, etc. And as we have seen is the attitude of the states toward green energy that comes as the last in their focus area. So going forward, do you think it will be a challenge that these states which do not buy green energy will not invest any further in green energy, and this would be a major problem for the investors?
Very interesting. So, Shreya, let's step back a year or 2 years back. Can you tell me, barring Gujarat, in last 2 years, which states have actually brought out their own bids to buy and set up projects?
None.
And some of them who have tried have failed. Only Gujarat and very recently Andhra Pradesh solar bid of 10,000 megawatt. I would like to discount that, whatever the reason is. Otherwise, what? Nobody has brought out anything. Look at Karnataka, which was the forefront of renewables, has not brought out any bid for last 2 years. Tamil Nadu, none. Maharashtra brought out some solar bids. Nobody, those tariffs were high, they just dropped it. Rajasthan, no bid. Madhya Pradesh, no bid. Where are we? So any which way, states were not investing. They were happy getting low tariffs through SECI bid. And all those bids anyway go to the states for implementation. So states are anyway not committing anything. From their kitty, states were not giving you anything, any which way, except that some evacuation infrastructure was being created by states. So now answering to their money going into social sector, it was always good. But healthcare, yes, I fully agree with you. Higher percentage of their budgets would now be shifted to healthcare. But I believe that once that money gets shifted to healthcare, probably their other schemes may get hit. Renewables may not have that much of impact. Their other free doles will get hit. There is as much money there under the FRBM Act, where you have to be fiscally responsible for what you buy and what you borrow. So I believe that other social schemes may get impacted. Now that only time will tell.
Including the electricity reforms in these states.
Including the electricity reforms will get impacted in the states, obviously. But electricity reforms will only come once you bring them out in the center. First, let's table that bill. Let that bill be debated. It will take a year and a half. I do not see Electricity Act getting implemented before 2023 because you are in a federal structure. The new Electricity Act amendments or the tariff policy or anything, it impinges on the rights of the states. They would want to cling on to those rights of appointing a regulator and controlling the freebies. In fact, if that amendment comes through, it will be very good for the sector because the free power will go away. Because then they have to give subsidy direct benefit transfers to the people. And government would want to give them free grain and free dole on their hand rather than giving them free power. And honestly speaking, people don't need free power. This is a political game. Nobody wants free power. These are all political brownie points you do to get. So I would be happy if the reforms take place. I'm not seeing the impact, what it is that states, even if they don't have to invest any money, they should actually encourage investments into the state. You look at any state, the moment EC starts seeing that, a lot of solar projects are coming in my state, I'm imposing 5 lakh rupees per megawatt, like Rajasthan did. They don't realize that they earn so much from tax revenue, so much of employment coming in. So, the doles to be given for unemployed youth goes down. One youth employed takes care of 5 people in the household. So you're uplifting 5 people. So states have to start thinking beyond petty politics. This country cannot survive on these power sector packages every 5 years.
Right. So, sir, you have really nicely laid out what the challenges are, what have been the challenges in the past. Let's talk about this next 5-6 years. If I were to ask you, can you name 3 or 4 or 5 things that must happen for us to reach the target? Forget the target, but to really accelerate a renewable revolution. What would those 3 or 4 or 5 things would be in the coming 5-6 years?
You don't need 4 things. Just implement the current Electricity Act in totality. Period. The new one. And I'm honestly telling you, the money will start flowing in. And another thing is you need land reform. I think that is going to be a bigger stumbling block. Actually, you have 3 issues. One is a policy, other is land, and third is evacuation. That is what accounts for renewable flow. Payments and all, still industry manages. It's not that we don't want money. Yes, we want money. But with SECI coming in, I think so that problem has come down considerably, except for the states projects where the problems continue. So if the central-driven program is there, I think so people are more comfortable. But land reforms, you don't even know who owns the land. The program of digitization has got some name for that, Bhumi something. It's not seen the light of the day. 5-6 years. Still work in progress. And secondly, a clear-cut roadmap of transmission sector and privatization of the transmission sector. Because if you rely totally on power grid, I'm sorry, you cannot go. Now you need large-scale, multi-level projects across the country. And we have an ambition of one sun, one world, one grid. That would require your strengthening of your internal grid before you go to the international market on the undersea cable. Because somebody invests on undersea cable, he does not get energy because your grid has failed here. So these three things is what is required. Policy reforms are a must. They are in the right direction. I would say thinking is right. But that political will has to be there to push for things.
I wanted to ask, this is just out of curiosity because this is something globally is being anticipated, feared rather, by a lot of experts, is that because countries would be looking at economic revival, sectors such as clean energy, climate change, environment, etc., tend to shift out of the focus areas of the governments. And in a developing economy like India, how much do you think this particular political will that you're mentioning would be there to push the case of climate change related initiative, not just clean energy, climate change as a whole?
So let me tell you, Shreya, you're still young, but in my life of 60 years, I would say when I was, not that I'm still sane, but when I understood the thing in, let's say, in last 25, 30 years, the way I have personally seen the climate change happening in the country is a serious cause of concern. You used to have one hurricane in 3 years or 4 years. Today, you have 3 hurricanes in 1 year. And if you do not invest in the climate change initiatives and in clean energy, you would end up spending much more on the disaster management because of this climate change. So governments are realizing that. Absolutely every government is realizing that. So it is not if and but, it is must. You have to invest. There is no way out now. We are seeing it day in and day out. It never used to happen. You are getting hurricanes by the day. And the devastation happening, you governments end up spending much more. And in fact, states suffer. Central is not suffering. The hurricanes are happening in states. So it is in the interest of the states to promote renewables. What is required is a mass movement, whether it is for pollution, whether it is for climate change, whether it is for consumption of renewables. And nothing takes away credit to any of the governments over the years. Everybody did good job on it. It's something similar. This is a disease. Climate change is going to be a disease. We started off with temperature rise of 1.5. Now we are talking of 2. Nobody is reaching anywhere. Governments are not converging. We are willing to spend billions of dollars on conferences and committees and webinars and everything and publishing books. From COP21, we are now into 26. I haven't seen what has moved. The rich still don't want to commit capital the way they were supposed to do. But governments are realizing on their own that we have to do it. But governments are not moving fast enough. You need a 5-year policy document. That's what you need. Please leave the industry alone with the 5-year policy document. No changes. Every bid, you can't change a policy document or a bidding guideline or anything. Do whatever you have to, but give it for 5 years. That 5 years, we will not change this. But I am confident the world will not take away funds from the climate change and renewables. Unfortunately for India, or fortunately for renewables in India, India is still heavily dependent on thermal. And it's not that the investments in thermal are stopping. One of the projections which I read is by 2050, India would still be adding almost what I was told is 60 or 80 gigawatts more of thermal. Now, if you're adding that many capacity, that means to take care of that impact of carbon, you need 3 times of renewable capacity. So India has to accelerate its renewable program so that there is no growth of the thermal rather than decelerate it. I understand base load is required. There is no doubt, and there is nothing that you would need some investment. But against 80 gigawatt, probably you could do with 40 gigawatts. Or you move to hydro, which unfortunately our country has just abandoned. Yes, I agree it has climate risks, but that's one-time risk. Thermal has every year risk. And hydro with dams can give a lot of relief to your grids if they act as a storage. If all your dam-based hydro projects of if you have 50 or 60 gigawatt of them and they are only used for balancing, it's a great thing. You can't use a hydro for a base load. We don't have gas, unfortunately. I'm honestly telling you, do three reforms: policy, land, and policy and regulations, land and evacuation. $50 billion year-on-year investment is going to happen. India has enough entrepreneurs to scale up and scale up fast. And then we can be belied and we can be proven wrong that there'll be only 10 big companies. Probably then we may have 15 or 20 big companies. See, already people who are there, they're not going anywhere. So they have no option but to go.
Sir, one last question that I wanted to ask you was that you mentioned that in your lifetime itself, now more extreme events are happening and so on. I mean, these events will impact sort of every part of the country and the globe. Like it will perhaps also has implications for the energy infrastructure and the renewable infrastructure itself. Do you want to speak about how the industry can innovate to make sure that you can weatherize against such extreme events going forward, if you have any thoughts on that?
We have been discussing, in fact, I'll be speaking on one of the panels on 15 by CEW on the impact on wind and solar due to climate change and the trend of wind in the country. Last year, the wind speed dropped by 40% in some of the cases. And energy is a cube of the wind speed. So imagine the drop in wind actually has been suffering for last 2 years. It is all climate change. I have been in this industry for last 15 years. I haven't seen this bad wind in last 15 years, never. So I am actually concerned on the climate change, and unfortunately, the industry cannot do much. If you look at Delhi, I have seen Delhi touching 45, 46, 47 in May. That's why you had school holidays, summer holidays from 8th of May. After 15th May, the heat was unbearable. Those, hot waves, heat waves in Delhi, where are they? I haven't seen a heat wave in Delhi this year. Well, it may be good, you may feel good, but those heat waves are also required. This year, because the hurricane, the wind we have done good for 15 days, but the monsoon pattern is changing. So difficult to predict. So industry cannot do much about it. So industry actually would want to invest more and more to avoid this climate change. See, as you concretize your cities and tier 2, tier 3, high rises come into play, the wind speeds at a surface level will start going down. So that's why, the wind turbines are going higher and higher to capture those high wind speeds. But the fact is, what is the last frontier in that height? And what is the last size in the wind turbine? Solar, okay, is slightly better off because, it gets less impacted. But having said that, this year the temperatures have been much cooler all around the country. If you actually observe in April and May, we have not reported heat waves and people dying in Rajasthan of Churu 50 degrees and, Marwar, this thing, and nothing has happened. So there were clouds, so solar is impacted. Peak May season, the generation is down by 2 to 3%. Now, what do you see? That, if the wind is down, solar is down, so your RPO obligation targets for the states and for the utilities is not going to be met. So next time what will happen is regulators will say, no, you install more. So that is a positive for renewables. But then it is not efficient. Your throughput is low. That's not good for the country. So it's a dilemma, what you have to do. But I believe no government worth its name in the world today can shift funds away from climate change. Share, you are right. It used to happen in the past. Not anymore. Not anymore. One reason is that the renewable sector is standing on its own leg. There are hardly any subsidies. Earlier, it used to happen because it was subsidized. So government removed those subsidies and things used to collapse.
Let's hope the governments pay heed to that particular point of yours. I think it's the points that you mentioned is very interesting. It's like a vicious circle. Because of climate change, we have to install more renewable energy, but then it is getting impacted by climate change. So it would need a collective effort from all across industry, policymakers, global supply chain.
To accelerate the deployment, you cannot decelerate it. It's as simple as that. And all these COPs around the world happening, they better come out and stop spending money on COP, but start giving money to the developing world to deploy more.
Right, sir. I think we will close now, because otherwise this is a discussion that can go on for hours. And and your time is very precious, and we want to thank you for taking out such a long time for us to discuss so many things under the sun, literally, with us. So thank you. It was a very, very fascinating discussion, sir. Thank you so much.
So we believe that the sun shines bright and wind continues to blow, so that
Absolutely.
we all breathe properly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
For more information about the podcast, visit us online at www.101reporters.com/podcast/the_India_energy_hour. You can also reach out to us on social media and send us your comments and suggestions. My Twitter handle is @SandeepPai with a double I, and Shreya's Twitter handle is @Shreya_J.